After acquiring Chestnut Hill ore banks in 1851, experienced ironmaster Clement Grubb built the St. Charles furnace along the Susquehanna River just north of Columbia, Pennsylvania. He was a fourth-generation Grubb, a once powerful and wealthy family that dominated the state's iron industry in the mid-19th century. Up until 1830, most iron furnaces in the U.S. used charcoal as fuel. This required the consumption of many acres of forest, as well as the labor of the charcoal makers. Called colliers, these skilled workers cut the trees down and also, more importantly, knew how to stack and burn the wood in a specific way that produced high-quality charcoal. As pig iron production increased from 23,000 tons per year just before the Revolutionary War to 300 tons per year by 1840, so did the industry's voracious appetite for woodlands. An average charcoal-fueled iron furnace during that period could consume as much as 1 acre of forest per day. By the middle of the century, the increasing cost of producing this charcoal was limiting the further growth of iron production. As a result, anthracite coal began to replace charcoal as the preferred fuel for furnaces in order to meet the growing demand for iron products. Coal was more abundant than wood, and it was cheaper to produce and get to the furnace. Coal also burned hotter than wood, which helped to lower the costs of large-scale iron production by making the smelting process more efficient. But exactly how was coal able to do this? Simply put, the hotter the temperature inside the furnace's bosh, the faster the iron could melt out of the ore and down into the crucible. This would have, in turn, boosted the output and also allowed the furnace to use lower-grade ore that would have previously not been cost-effective to use was now viable as a source of iron. Lower-grade ore would have been cheaper as well, thus lowering the cost of the pig iron produced. If the producer passed on these savings to the buyer, they would be able to gain the additional advantage of increased market share, assuming the quality of the iron was comparable. These factors, combined with the explosion of demand which accompanied the growth of the railroads, all converged and made innovation of the process itself part of the industry's competitive dynamic. This was why Clement Grubb built the St. Charles furnace to be fueled by anthracite coal instead of charcoal. But why did he build it as a hot blast anthracite furnace instead of the traditional older style cold blast? In order to reap the benefits of using coal as a fuel source instead of charcoal, the furnace operator had to be able to keep the temperature inside the bosh high and consistent over time. In order to solve this issue, another innovation had to be introduced into the process. First developed by James Nielsen in the 1820s, the hot blast technique reduced the amount of fuel the blast furnace required by 40 to 75%. For example, a furnace requiring 8 tons of fuel for each ton of iron produced in 1829 would have needed only 3 tons of fuel 4 years later to produce that same ton of iron after the adoption of the hot blast technique. This method used preheated air injected into the furnace as a way to maintain the uniformly high temperatures required for a consistent burn of the ore. A series of hot blast stoves would heat air to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit before forcing it into the bosh. The forcing of this preheated air also helped to move waste gases produced during the smelting process up and out of the flue, and the iron and slag down towards the tap hole. This was where the melted iron was allowed to drain out of the furnace. Increased fuel efficiency allowed for the use of lower quality coal as well, which would have given the furnace owners the opportunity to either increase their profit or lower the price of their iron in a competitive bid to increase their business by undercutting the prices of other furnaces. The St. Charles furnace was in operation from 1854 to 1886. With an annual production estimated to have been 10,000 tons per year, the furnace would have produced a total of approximately 320,000 tons of pig iron over its lifetime. But if we convert that number using the 2,000-pound short ton, also known as the US ton, we get a total lifetime output of 640 million pounds of iron. Sounds like a lot of iron, right? By 1860, 6 years after the St. Charles furnace was built, only 1/3 of the pig iron produced in the United States was made using charcoal as fuel. I imagine these furnaces would have found it increasingly difficult to keep up with the production efficiencies enjoyed by the more technologically advanced furnaces, like the St. Charles, which itself would have had to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and advance technologically as well. Perhaps this is why it was remodeled in 1879, but it was only in blast for 6 more years, finally shutting down for good in 1886. That was 130 years ago, and all that's left to remind us of what once was are the ruins we see today along the Lancaster River Trail.
There you have it, the St. Charles Iron Furnace, just above beautiful Columbia, PA. If you like this episode, please hit subscribe, ring my bell for notifications, follow me on all the platforms, and share me on all the socials. All right, it helps my channel grow, and I would appreciate it. This is Brett for TopoRanger, and I'll see you in the next episode.